Perfect.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hobby Hotline, episode 36. And as always, my name's Drew, the DH, and joining me this week, Brian Gray, the Leaf CEO. How you doing, Brian?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing good. And then also joining us, another one of our awesome new co-hosts. You guys know him, Brody the Kid. What's up, bud?
What's up, guys?
Not much, man. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody have a safe and enjoyable last couple weeks and everything. It's been a while since I've been on the show. Glad to be back on. But as always, guys, this is the Hobby's one and only live call-in show. So please call in and join the show. I'm going to be putting the link to the show right here in the comments. So call in whenever you'd like and join the show. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions you'd have for myself, Brian, Brody, or just things about the hobby you'd like to talk about, call in, let us know. We would love to talk about it with you. But all right, guys. Well, I wanted to talk about a couple of things before we do get a couple of calls and everything. What's up, James? But the T206 Wagner this week, one of the most popular calls in one of the most popular cards in the hobby, in the history of the hobby, just set a record for vintage cards, at least, selling for $3.25 million. And the first thing that I thought of when I saw this was, wow, it didn't sell for more. Because it was actually, I think it was a graded 3 copy, which is a solid grade for that card. But the Trout Super sold for 3.9. And I just look at this stuff and I'm like, wow, that's a really big sale. But I don't know. I kind of expected more from a 3. Brian, what did you think when you saw that sale?
I thought it was a little high. I'll be honest with you, because really? I think, well, there's no comps for that card.
Right.
You know, the card that's graded much, much better is obviously trim. You know, but it's still the most desirable Wagner, even though it's trimmed in a PSA holder. I think the thing is, when was the last time you saw a video of Wagner playing?
Right.
I mean, Wagner is easily, there's a legend around the card, but Wagner is a personality, the Flying Dutchman. No one really knows him.
Right.
Brody's generation, they'll only know because they are hardcore in cards and they're studying and learning this stuff.
Right.
But they have no connection with Honus Wagner. And I think, to me, I'm shocked that card continues to attract the attention it has. But I would not be shocked if we're seeing kind of the full maturity on that one, and if people start looking for more iconic cards to buy. Because again, I'd much rather own, for that kind of money, I'd much rather own a PSA 9 mantle.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Well, I would much rather own a 52 mantle PSA 9. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
20 times out of 10, I'd do that. You know.
Yeah. Well, Brody,
so I think it was a high price. I don't think it was cheap.
Nice. Well, that's really interesting, and you do bring up a good point. And Brody, I'm glad to have you on here when Brian said that, because you know, you and your friends and stuff like that, the people that you connect with, because I know you connect with a lot of the younger kids in this hobby that are in the hobby. What do you guys look at the Wagner? How does your generation view that card?
I mean, I don't even know if a lot of my friends know who Honus Wagner is, just because he played in the 1900s. I mean, the only reason I really know is because that card is so famous.
Right.
But I think PSA 3 for that card, that's a pretty good grade for it. But I don't think it's going to be able to beat the Trout unless there's like a 4 or a 5, because that Trout is just crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And we might touch on this some more in just a moment, but we do have our first caller, and we'll bring him in. He's a regular on Hobby Hotline. Glad to have him on the show again. Mr. James, Homo, what's up, man?
Pretty good, guys. How are you? Happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday, bud. What's going on?
So there's this There's this fly around me here.
Oh.
Is there a fly on my head? Is there a fly?
Hold on.
So
Tops might be taking a picture of you. Hold on.
Okay, so I'm the Tops Now guy. So let's talk about it.
Yep.
Card of the year. Not to get too political. I don't want to get political on this show, politics aside, but
good,
card of the year. Yeah.
Card of the year. That's a stretch.
I bought a bunch, but I don't think it's the card of the year by any means. But I bought a bunch.
Yeah, I did not buy a bunch. The only Tops Now that I've been buying is soccer, because it's a hidden gem right now on Tops Now. So I've been buying a ton of soccer, but like a ton of it. I just got my Musalas in, and stoked about those. But no, I mean, it's an interesting card. I knew they would do it. I mean, they've been doing a lot of that stuff right now. So, I mean, I knew they would do it, especially with all the Garbage Pail Kid sets they've been doing on politics and all that. So why not? And I think it's funny. I think it's humorous, but I mean, hey, I thought the Fauci card was hilarious and it wouldn't sell anything, and it turned out to be this ridiculous thing. So I know nothing. I've come to learn when it comes to Tops Now, I know nothing. Yeah, I know nothing.
highest printed Tops Now card to date was that Fauci card, right?
Yeah,
like it's crazy. And yeah, like so those aren't aware, this is not the first time that they've done the political debate, presidential political debate cards. They did them 4 years ago, and those cards are crazy priced. Like there's not many available out there on, let's say, secondary like eBay. There's only maybe 2 or 3 listings, and the people that are selling them, they're asking for $100 plus on those cards. They are I will say, as a Tops Now guy, they're a hidden gem. Granted, actually the first debate with Trump and Biden, those were underprinted. From what my guess was going to be, I thought that Trump would print a ton, and it didn't. So I was kind of surprised at that. Even the other, there's a whole bunch of other Tops Now cards where the teams that have won the championship go, and these are kind of like undervalued, I would say, underprinted. So it'll be interesting to see how the Pence does, considering the fly is there. And I'm actually, the talk in some of the Tops Now groups was, will they actually keep the card like that? Like, they've changed cards before, and it's in the fine print of any Tops Now product that the photo is subject to change. So it'll be it'll be surprising if they actually printed with the fly.
Oh, you mean that so they can change the card from like the image that you buy? They can change it and not tell you, and so it just shows up from Tops Now with a completely different image?
Well, if they do that, I can tell you I'll be charging back my credit card for thousands of them.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I love that because I think if you buy quantity, it costs you like $4.40 with tax, $4.40. I think the downside is you sell them for $2 and dump them, and the upside is $20. That's a great risk return.
Right.
I mean, we used to make a product called Leaf Live. It was the same concept. And I was just looking yesterday. We did a Trump-Hillary debate card in 2016. And I saw one sell for $175. 2 of them sold for $175 on eBay. I was like, we charged $3 for that. It was $175 on eBay. And so I can see where the demand is, but I just think the risk profile is so fantastic. You lose $2 a card, or you make $18 a card, or $13 a card. I love that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about you, Brody? Are you guys into the political cards? I mean, being. No, go right ahead, bud.
I haven't really done anything with them, but I mean, I think, like you said, I think they could have high demand for sure.
Yeah. So James, sorry, I guess you had some technical difficulties there, but so what do you think? I mean, do you think these are going to be something that like Hotline? I think like what Brian said it best. Like the upside probably is around $20 or so. I don't know. I just don't see these as something that I think the upside is $20 maybe for a little while, and then the upside's a lot lower. I don't see these holding a ton of value. Maybe certain ones, like possibly if they actually leave the fly in, which I really hope they do. I mean, they've started to include bat flips and stuff, at least, so maybe they're starting to get a little bit of a sense of humor. Maybe they'll leave it in. Now that I know that they can change it, that's kind of shocking to me. But I would hope that they wouldn't on something that's going to hit such a high print run, I think. But I don't think once all this, like maybe for a couple of months, this is over. But really, like by March or April, is that something that you're going to be that's going to have like high search results on eBay? You know, like I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the interesting part is that, you know, with MLB cards, MLB has to approve every single photo that they use. And again, they've changed the photo based on that fact. Even the description. Last year, I don't know if you remember one of the Yankees games, the manager mentioned about, you know, calling his players savages, and they had printed that on the card, on the original mock-up, and they changed it. And they actually ended up sending that card to free to everyone that bought one because it wasn't the original card that everyone purchased. I would say with these political cards, no one's having to approve anything, so they can hopefully print that image without issue. Yeah.
And Drew, where I will disagree with you is in the history of presidential debates, there are probably maybe 5 total moments you can recollect total.
Right, yeah.
And this stupid little nuisance of a fly is one you are going to remember.
That's true.
And I think honestly on Kamala's card, it should have had a caption, on Biden's card, will you just shut up? I think that honestly, those are moments we are never going to forget.
Yeah, you're right.
We are never going to forget. And we have decision trading cards coming out next week.
I know.
Which is an all-political set that is like this on super steroids, where there's cards where, you know, it makes fun of the nicknames Trump calls people, like Sleepy Joe and, you know, Pocahontas and all this crap.
That's great.
So if you're into this, there's going to be a lot of ammo out there. And I think James is right. There's no chance they're changing that card because no one has to have approval.
Yeah.
We can make rights of politicians with no permission. And I think as a manufacturer, I can tell you that. And I think these moments, I think you're wrong on this one, Drew. People are going to remember that stupid little fly for a long time.
Well, I agree with you there. I never really thought about it like that, but that is probably one of the only moments that I will remember. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for calling in, bud. And guys, please, I put the link in the comments. Call in, join the show. Any questions you have. What's up, Antonio? Hope everything's good, bud. But call in, join the show. Any questions you have, even if it's not on the topic that we are talking about. But Brian, I'd never really thought about that before. That you're right. That's probably one of the only things that I really am gonna remember from debates. Period. So I could see that possibly having a little more staying power than I thought. But you mentioned that you're putting out a political set. How are those going? Do those
sold out?
I mean,
sold out in a flash. Biggest production ever. They did the same sets in 16. They sold way more now. And I think the great thing about that set is it has all kinds of people who are in politics. So your next president, whoever that is, after this motley crew, is going to pop out of this. And it's so fascinating because we see cards like there's a Trump Melania card. It was like number 3 from like 16 that just sold for $400 on eBay.
Yep. And
so, I mean, there is real demand for these cards because it appeals to an even bigger segment right now than sports does. And so it's fascinating. And I think there's an incredible opportunity. And we work with Benchwarmer on the production of that release. We distribute it. And I mean, I was shocked how well it sold. I know people care, but people are fighting over the product. So I think this might be here to stay. And I think this is a legit category going forward. Politics and world events is a legit category.
Well, that's interesting to me. I never really thought about it, but yeah, I mean, especially I did see that recent release did sell out that quick. So I mean, there's a demand there for it, and if you look on any social media, it's all anyone's talking about. So is politics these days, even when there's not debates, even when it's 2 years into a presidency, it's all you see people talking about. So it really may be here to stay. Brody, what do you think? I mean, you think this is something that you're going to start to see, and as you grow forward, I don't know how into politics you are, obviously at this age, but I mean, I don't know if you're in debate, all that type of stuff growing up, but is this something, that you could find yourself interested in the future,
Well, I think there's definitely a huge demand for it. I mean, people really care about, like you said, it's the thing that everybody talks about on social media. Like, I have school off, like that's a big day and event, and I think that's going to carry a huge demand for sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. All right, y'all. Well, we'll go back to the Wagner for a little bit because I wanted to touch on that just a little while. And guys, please call in and let us know anything you'd like to talk about, any questions you might have for Brian or myself, or any questions or comments about the hobby. But we were talking about that T206 for a little bit, and Brody, you had said most of your generation doesn't recognize it and stuff, and Brian, you had mentioned that you're surprised it's as iconic of a card as it was. Now, we had a call right before I got to talk about it, but I completely agree with you on that. And I wanted to talk about that just a little bit because it's something that I've always said, and I never understood when I got back into the hobby after a while. I wasn't even familiar that much with the card because as a kid, I didn't pay too much attention to it. And so I've never really understood where it gets its value. But when you see it sell for that, and then you see the Trout sell for 3.9 million, I don't know. The first thing that I saw when I looked at that is it kind of shows that that some of that new money that we talk about that's in the hobby, and some of these new people are, they've got a lot of money and they're spending it, on the people that they've seen, like the Mike Trouts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, someone in the comments mentioned, when was the last time you saw Mantle play? Well, at least there's video of Mantle.
Yes.
There's video of Mantle. There is no video of Honus Wagner. I don't think there's barely still photography. I mean, from his early years. So, I mean, there's no doubt that the new recency bias has some play there. There's no doubt. But again, you're talking about a 1 of 1 versus a 1 of
right
150 or whatever the real number is on Wagner's floating around. The Wagner's not the finest of its type. It's a slightly above middle of the road Wagner, where it's an above the middle of the road. It's an above average Wagner, where the Trout is the ultimate Trout. I mean, there's a lot of factors at play there. I think that, to me, it's very easy to understand. But again, I think at this point, any one of these cards that's selling for this money is probably getting sold in fractional share ownership later, where people can own a little piece of it for $300 or $20 or whatever they do, which I hate that generally. So, I mean, we'll see, but I think that's where this card's going to end up too, because those companies are pouring money into these fractional ownership opportunities.
So you mentioned you didn't like the fractional ownership stuff, like Rally and stuff like that. Or do you think that's something that's going to stick around? What do you think of like those programs? Because I had one of the guys that's heavily involved in Rally on my show, and it was an interesting concept, and I've looked into it and I've dove into it a little bit just to see what it was. But so far, it's been insanely underwhelming and not what I expected at all. So, I mean, is that something you think is going to stick around?
Listen, if you want to buy a $40 share of this Honus Wagner just so you can say you own a piece of it, guy that buys 1% of the Boston Celtics, that's fine. As an investment, it's horrific. There's no liquidity. You can't sell your share easily. And when it ultimately gets sold, you don't get to decide when it gets sold. They do. Like the ultimate asset, when it's finally put somewhere, they're going to decide, like on the 53 Topps Mantle PSA 10.
Yeah.
And don't think you're paying a cheap price. Guess what? When you buy into this fractional ownership, you are paying a world record price for that card because they just bought it at auction for an obscene amount or in a private sale an obscene amount and are marking it up to you. Right. So guess what? you just paid the highest that anyone's ever paid for an asset,
Yeah.
and you're not allowed to sell it. Good luck to you.
Exactly.
If I bought Apple stock and wasn't allowed to sell it, and then guess what? You get to pay the highest price ever, and you can't sell it. Kind of more. I mean, I'm not saying you're more if you buy it because it's kind of fun to be able to say you own it. But all you're doing is buying bragging rights. You're not buying an asset that is really a strong investment. And like the 53 Topps Mantle is horribly priced. Yeah. It's a terrible card at that level. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
It's a horrible card for $1.5 million. Horrible.
I completely agree. That's why I was only glad I put about $20 in. But before we get back to that, we actually have a really great question here in the comments from Racing Card Info. Thanks, bud, for the question. But he asks, with hockey done, baseball and basketball finishing up, what happens to the hobby? Is everyone going to start collecting NASCAR and football now? So Brody, I'll let you kick this one off. What do you think with all these sports done and coming to an end? What do you see? Is it a cooling off period? You know, what do you see going forward here?
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely a cool-off period. I mean, you've seen it with some Luka Doncic stuff. During the playoffs, stuff was really hot, and then once they got out, it's still pretty expensive, but it dropped a little bit. And I think a couple of the guys that are going to be ending their seasons, like I'm going to give an example, Randy Arozarena on the Rays, who's been on fire. Yeah. He's hitting like 400 in the playoffs. He's just doing crazy. Like his stuff is pretty expensive right now. He'll probably drop a little bit, and I think that's the time to buy him because he's doing really well. And I think it's just going to go to football. Like he said, I think it's going to go, the man's going to be at football, especially as we're getting towards the playoffs for football and stuff like that, knowing what rookies are doing well and what ones are kind of been busts or what ones haven't even played yet. I think it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, Brian, what about you?
I mean, I'm in a boat of, number one, as a stock guy, I can tell you that the cooling off period is right after earnings, which is like the end of the season, the playoffs. Company announces their earnings. And the stock may shoot up if they do great, and it may drop if they do bad. But like a week later, that's a non-event, and we're on to the future. And I think, yes, Luka dropped from 2,000 on Prism down to 1,200. And yes, Giannis went from 8,000 down to 3,200. And I think those cards got a little overly hyped probably in the run-up. Mm-hmm. But this is consolidation, and this is healthy.
Right.
When Tesla dropped from 320 down to 180, and now it's the equivalent of 2,400 or 2,000, whatever, after the split, like that drop, you could have panicked and thrown your hands up in the air and said, "Oh my God, the world's ending. It's a crash. It's cooling off." But guess what? It's a cooling off period is when you want to be buying. I mean, honestly, we were all buying on the way up because it kept going up. But like, I'm pouring more money in today than I ever have. And I can tell you I've spent over $1 million in the last 2 months buying assets in this category. And it's not the hot fat. It's guys that have been knocked out of the playoffs. Guys that are, that's what I'm buying.
Yep.
Stuff that and what's funny is you see right now things like the stuff I touted on Twitter a year ago or 8 months ago, mm-hmm. 84 Topps Marinos, 81 Topps Montanas, 86 Topps Rices. That stuff is starting to surge.
Yeah.
And they're selling off all these new guys. And I think that's a mistake. I think the old stuff is still solid, but I think these news guys are a buy. I think especially in the offseason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lock that if you buy Tatis Topps number 410 PSA 10s mm-hmm. at 140 or 150 on eBay, those are going to be 200.
Yes.
Just write it down. Acuna's at 150, 160. The guy is the closest thing to a Trout we've got after Trout. And his stuff's down 25% after ending the season or, after he had a few injuries, but he's finishing strong. So, I mean, I don't understand. I think it's a phenomenal buy. So,
this
is a buying opportunity. Why do you want to overpay? Why do you want to overpay for the asset when you can buy it cheaper?
No, I completely agree. I don't even know if I'd say it's a cooling off period necessarily. I mean, it might be a cooling off period in terms of you're not going to see 4 different types of sports on at once, But I mean, we're gonna might start going back to seeing a normalcy in schedules, but you're gonna see certain guys cool off. Like everybody you just mentioned, the Luka's dropping, the Giannis is dropping. I've already bought a couple of each. I mean, it's the time to buy them. I mean, I found a ton of great deals on Zion Prisms and Ja Prisms. I mean, tons of things that are just gonna go back up. I mean, there's always these little drops in certain areas. Arizania is a perfect example. His stuff flying right now. I sold yesterday while I was working. I think I sold like $300 of his stuff off of eBay. And there's going to be a cooling off period in the off season, just like Tyler Hero. And, you know, leading up into next season, certain players might start to get that hype back up again. But like Brian said, I think it's very healthy for the hobby, and it's that perfect buying opportunity. I mean, this is the time to be buying a lot of people. And I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, everything's not selling for them. And I'm like, oh, then the price is just too high because everybody's buying right now. I know, Brian, like you said, you're buying like crazy right now. I'm buying like crazy right now. I mean, this is the time to do it.
Well, there's a comment over on the side, James Kutkowski.
Yeah.
He expects a 70% retracement from 2020. James, I pray you're right because I won't have any money left. Because every penny we own will be in the card market at that stage. I can tell you right now, there's zero chance that's happening. And again, I say this because I'm talking to hedge fund guys who are pouring not $1 million or $2 million, but they're ready to pour tens of millions into these markets. There's not enough cards.
Yeah.
There's not enough cards to meet tens of millions of dollars. Yeah. A card, even like a card like Acuna, where there's plenty of them. I'm telling you right now, there's tons of Acuna Topps Update PSA 10s. Yeah. $1 million, that card's 400. 450. Yeah. 150 today. 500. Yeah. So it's not going to be hard if that money does come to play. It's not going to be hard for these assets. You have to think of this as art now. Quit thinking of it as cardboard. It's art.
Yes.
And unlike Rembrandt, someone mentioned earlier, the people depicted here grow and sink in popularity, and that creates volatility that is very appealing to gamblers and investors alike.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree with you. It 100% needs to be looked at as art now, and an important asset, and not just, you know, cards and cardboard. You know, Brody, coming from a younger generation, is that kind of how you see like yourself and some other kids, diehard collectors and stuff like that? You know, are you guys looking at them in that aspect as well?
Well, yeah, it definitely is art. I mean, some of the designs are crazy. Like you said, it's not cardboard. Like little cardboard pieces don't sell for millions of dollars. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And you mentioned Tyler Hero. I mean, he's a great example of the cool down period. Obviously the Heat stayed in yesterday to go into Game 6.
Yeah.
If the Heat somehow come back and they win and the Heat win, Hero stuff's going to go way up, and then a couple months later it will go down because they're not playing.
Yeah,
it's a perfect example. I think he's definitely the rookie to buy, especially if they win. That for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And hey, you can keep talking about the Heat coming back and winning all you want. I'm down for that. Any day of the week. I love me some Tyler Hero. But yeah, he's going to drop and then he's going to come back up. But Brian, you mentioned you were talking to a lot of hedge fund guys and stuff like that. That's what I've been talking to a lot of people about for a long time. When I see all these comments, I didn't really plan on discussing this, but you brought it up, and now kind of want to a little bit. But you see all these people saying that we're in this big bubble that's about to burst, and I keep talking about like the money that's coming into this hobby and where it's coming from now isn't the same as it was a long time ago, and it's going to put built-in safeguards against that. Like, these people aren't, unless everyone at the same time decides to withdraw all their money at once, I just don't ever seeing that happen.
Yeah, no, and I can tell you, I've had, since I started touting and giving some advice for free, not where I'm investing in the cards and hoping to make the card go up by holding it up. But like, I give advice on Twitter for free to everyone, and I do it at the same exact time that I'm going to start buying. So I say, guys, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to buy every single Ryan Sandberg, PSA 10 under 700, or whatever it is.
Yep.
I wait 10 minutes and I buy everyone under 700. And I give people a chance to buy along with me.
Yeah.
Ever since that, I've had hedge fund guys. I've had athletes, even including some we work with, who've come to me and asked for my help putting their money to work. Now, I'm not an investment advisor formally, so I only tell them what I believe is a good investment. But I'm telling you, these guys are running $50 billion hedge funds, and these guys are athletes that have made or make 5, 10, 15 million a year. These guys aren't playing around. And I'm telling you now, the amount of money that was in the hobby 5 years ago, it would take 10 guys coming in the market, hedgies or hedge fund guys, 10 guys could double the investment size of the market in a snap by just putting their money in play. And so I think anyone who is short-sighted on this is short-sighted.
Yeah.
You've got to have a much bigger vision. And if you don't, that's okay, because guess what? If every single person believed what I believe, that this market is still in the early stages of its incline, if everyone thought it was going straight up, it would not go straight up.
Right.
You have to have naysayers and disbelievers in order for any market to continue a parabolic rise like this.
Yep.
It takes naysayers. So I'm so thankful when guys don't believe.
Yeah.
There's just another guy we get to prove wrong that this has changed.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, actually. And I do have to say you have been dead on with a couple of those investments, and I do like the way that you do that by giving people a chance to to buy with you. You know, because I've actually taken you up on quite a few of those deals myself. But guys, once again, put the link up in the chat. Please call in and join the show. Any questions, comments that you have, we'd love to have you join. But I guess we'll move on now. There's a couple other things I wanted to touch on, but one of them, obviously, PSA. They announced this week that they are doing a major expansion, and they've purchased a pretty large building. And then, of course, in there they mention putting automation in play. So when you hear that, obviously they don't specify anything in the automation, and I have my assumptions on everything, but they say this is going to help with some of the backlog and everything should get a lot quicker. But you know, I'm a little iffy on everything, and I think the automation is not going to boil down to too much at all. But Brian, when you saw PSA doing this, do you think this is going to help with the backlog? And you know, when they get this backlog up, do you think that they would ever lower the prices back on some of their services, or if those prices, you know, that have jumped up are here to stay, even when they get caught up?
Number one, I think automation means when you put that little barcode on the outside of the box to generate your order now, that they can scan it and push it somewhere faster.
Yes.
That's your automation. So don't get excited. Computers aren't grading cards, and they can't anyway. Don't listen to that garbage. Guys say, well, computers will be grading cards someday. Rich Klein just popped up in the bottom. Yep. He will tell you, computers aren't grading cards, and if they do, you'll never grade another card.
Okay, I will tell you, because I work for ComC, and we have certain proprietary automation patented systems that help us ID our cards. But I still have to make the final decision. Does that match what's on the screen? And Brian's right, but it cuts down by a significant proportion of time how much you identify the card. If all, let's say PSA licensed our image processing or whatever the term is, and that cut down a lot of the work the IDers had to do from, let's say, 20 hours a day to 10 hours a day. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but if that cut down half the amount of time they had to spend on each card and only then dealt with problematic cards, that speeds up one part of the process right there. And that's a good example of how automation can work to speed up the process, but not have a person actually physically look at the card for the grade, but speed up some of the stuff around what the whole key is, which is grading the card. You know, you can also then match the card into the database automatically, instead of having to have somebody manually enter the card into PSA's database. I remember when PSA used to do a book. The Pop Report used to be a book. And I would actually get the book. And I think 88 score glossy Craig Biggio was named 6 different ways in that book. You only want one.
Yeah.
And if that speeds that up, and I know that sounds minor and that has nothing to do with grading the card, but there are so many processes involved with grading the card that if you can speed up everything other than the actual grading the card, you may actually be able to spend more time grading the card because you've sped up everything else around it. It's, I dropped my car off at my dealership for servicing. I also have my wife and mother-in-law like a local guy who basically runs a place out of, and he has a place 5 minutes away. And when I go to him for something, it's 2 people looking at the item and 2 people handling the paperwork. When I go to the dealership, because I'm also fascinated by process, there's 13 people handling the process between the time I get the car, I drop the car off and get the car back. Because I actually asked one of my service reps once about that. And, in PSA, if we can knock down, let's say from 13 to 10, 2 of the processes, you've now sped up the time and you've helped them with their backlog.
Now, the problem with that is that pricing on grading is never coming back down. That's over.
Yeah.
I'm not saying pricing.
Right.
I'm talking about the process.
And the problem,
I'm not saying one word about pricing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Processing of the cards gets faster. The problem is the eyeballs to look at the cards, there are none. Because if you have a decent eye and you're already trained, you're making way more money than a grader does. Trust me, I know. I could go grade cards. Obviously, I'm not grading cards.
Right.
So you're doing just fine.
I have employees that would be senior graders at either of the companies who make way more money than a grader does, and they get to work with me, which is a bonus. But the big picture is it's very hard to hire graders, and that's everyone's answer. Just hire more graders.
No.
Yeah.
No. We were talking about that.
That's the answer. Yeah, let's just find 2 politicians under run for office. Sure.
Hey, Brian, you're right, because one of the problems is the sheer, the pay scale, the pay grade is not always conducive to the skill you need to do it. And that was pointed out by one of my coworkers on Twitter this week. You may have read Angela's point, you may have not have, but when she posted that, it's like, hey, that's the steady answer. Well, except the steady answer is you don't find people who are qualified to do it. But that's all I'm pointing out about if we can get technology to even nibble at the edges for PSA, it's worth it for them. And it'll increase their profits too at the same time. Yeah. That's a win-win for like all of us, and we get our cards back faster. And your point, Brian, I want you to understand on this one, I'm not arguing.
For sure. And grading will be more expensive in 6 months than it is today. And I wish they would just change the price forever.
I know.
And just say, it's $50 to grade a card. So take your $2 Prism rookies and send them to SGC or someone who no one cares. For real. Because I'm being honest, the big 2 companies at this stage have no business handling $2 cards. They don't belong in slabs right now until there's a $6 or $8 slab company. They do not belong in slabs right now. Quit it. You're jamming up the system, sending in Kendrick Nunn-based Prism.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
They're legit cards.
I completely agree with you in that.
Back in the day, when I was at Beckett, and this is centuries ago, and we were in the price guide, and we knew, the grading was a separate division. We would always tell people if they asked us for advice, we would tell you. And there were always exceptions to the rule, and now there seems to be more exceptions than the rule. But it's like if the value of the card, if the grading fee is 10 to 15% of the value to the card, then there's absolutely no harm in sending it in. Yeah. In terms of what it costs you to grade. If it's a $50 card, it's costing you $8 to grade it, send it in. Where now, as Brian points out, one of the things that has really slowed down the world is people are spending $15 for a $2 graded card. Yeah. So, that's really slowed down the world. And I'm not objecting it's a free country. You can spend your money however you want, but at some point the ROI has to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and if Brian, if it is $50 to grade a card, you're not going to see $3 cards sent in anymore because the ROI is going to be.
Well, you've already seen that change since the last price increase. You've started to see a lot more people not sending cards in. I've been able to find so many more gradable cards on the market than I could before, but I've also seen a whole lot more people with a lot less of these cards that they'd like Kyle, Lewis, Allen, and Ginter isn't being sent in anymore compared to where it would be maybe a little while ago. So you're already seeing a change quite a bit, but I'm with you, Brian. I wish they would just up the price. Say this is what it is, get to where you're comfortable with, get to where you want it, and stick to it. But we actually have a question in the chat from Sports Card Live, which I'll actually be on there tonight, guys, at 10 p.m., late night on the East Coast. But Jeremy asks, morning, gents. Thoughts on Iserman PSA 10 OPCs tripling and Lemieux PSA 9 OPCs doubling in the past month? Are people starting to see the opportunities in hockey? So
Brian,
what do you guys think about it, Brody?
Well, I think I think this is something with all sports. Like I saw a thing on eBay, they put out their most increased items, and hockey going up by like 99%.
Yep.
Soccer was like 985%. Like I think all these sports, man, are gonna start booming because I think that's just how the hobby is.
Yeah, I think they saw opportunity there. I think they saw that all these markets were strengthening. I thought they saw that there was a bigger demand for everything. Hockey did a great job coming back from the pandemic and everything and having a successful season. They do a great job interacting with fans. It's always been very much a collector's area of the industry as opposed to where people are actually prospecting and flipping money. But yeah, I think people are starting to see the opportunities. I think they saw those cards as maybe a little too cheap. I always thought they were pretty cheap. I picked some up because of how cheap they were, but they are absolutely exploding. But Brian, what do you think? What do you think with the hockey market right now?
It's funny. I was on Jeremy's show about a month ago, and I was like, "Man, these hockey assets are underperforming," and they had started going up. I didn't know this because honestly, I couldn't pour enough money into 86 Topps Rices, 84 Marinos, 84 Always, 81 Montanas. I mean, I saw much more value there for me, even in 8s and 9s, not just 10s. But I saw that value, and I thought my knock on the hockey was always the Canadian dollar was garbage. It's getting better finally, but the Canadian dollar was garbage. The hockey collector is a very fickle collector. The guy puts one card in his collection. He doesn't need 20 OPG Lemieux 9s. He generally buys one.
Right.
He's the guy who hates parallels and new products, by the way, because he's an old purist. But what's happening is this other money that's pouring in, like I said, in massive volumes, it's got to find values that are priced correct. And that's why you see Yager OPG Premiers shot up. That's why you see the Isermans. And that's why you see the Lemieux and the Waz. I mean, Wall OPG 10s have doubled.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of room there. And the thing is now, when you start seeing me give my promotional ideas on Twitter, things I think are deals, I'm looking next level. I'm looking at 9091 OPG Premier, Fedorovs and Madonos. They're dirt cheap Hall of Famers. Very cheap. Very, very cheap. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that I see value in, and you'll see them on Twitter if you follow me at Leaf CEO. But I just think there's tons of value. Young guns have started skyrocketing.
Ooh, flying.
And so now, if you're not buying young gun Eichels under 200 with a prospect, he could very easily get traded to a good team.
Yeah.
I mean, Eichel young guns are going to be $500. There's no reason not to own every one of those under $200. So, I mean, I think you just have to keep adapting and finding your spots. I'd caution on soccer because the stuff has run up really high and it's crashed because it was kind of crazy how that worked. That's the one place I'd be most cautious. But on the four major sports, no fear.
Well, I'll throw out one thing about soccer. I work in a Regis office, so there's a cross section of people that work, and they see the boxes of donations in my office. So every once in a while, they talk to me about sports cards, And I got introduced to one of the newer people working for one of the companies, and both of them are of foreign, background, and both of them collect soccer cards, and their friends collect soccer cards because that's what they grew up with. They grew up watching soccer. So there's, you talk about hedgies. Well, there's also that element too coming in. If you want that element coming in, and they have money, they're from a different background than we are, and they collect soccer because that's what they grew up with. So there's a market in soccer. Did it explode? Perhaps more than it should have, probably, but there is a real market there where, hey, I'm into soccer, so that works. And as for hockey, and Jeremy's point, just remember the two guys he mentioned, most of the guys you mentioned, with the exception of Eichel, and there's more than Eichel too in the young guns. There's a lot of good young guns, but one of the things is that everybody he mentioned almost fits within the parameter of, I'm coming back to the hockey world I grew up in. And if you collected hockey cards as a kid, and Brian, I know you were into hockey when it first got going in the early 90s.
I was.
These are the guys that you collected in those days. The 20-25-year rule is back. The guys you grew up watching are the guys you heard about that you could see film of. The Lemieux, the Gretzkys, the Yzermans, the LaFontaines, the people like that. Martin Brodeur, 90 scores a goalie. I mean, that's an easy card, but it's his only rookie card, easy identifiable. Yeah. Yager. All of a sudden, now you have a chance to buy those cards at reasonable prices.
Well, real quick, look below me on the screen and you'll see Brody. And what I'm telling you right now is the reason cards are a screaming, freaking buy right now.
Yes.
And why I cannot pour enough money in is, while it's hard to imagine, Brody will be 35 to 40 someday. I may not be here. My kids may have my cards making a fortune on them. But I will tell you now, Brody will be 40. And when Brody is 40, do you know who he's going to remember? He's going to remember all these Prism guys. He's going to remember all these baseball, Luis Robert. He's going to remember Tatis, Acuna, Soto. This is who he's going to remember. Yeah. History repeats itself. If we're buying Frank Thomas and back, the guys we saw, Brody's going to buy these kids. So, if you have any vision at all for the future, and if you're around for more than a 5-minute flip, listen to the kid. Who does he want? Who does he like? This is the kind of guys you should be buying.
And those are the guys you should be putting away. Just remember, those are the guys that you put away for the 20-year period. Yeah. And you can say, okay, I've got Luis Robert put away. I've got Tatis put away. I've got a Tatis or 2 or 20 put away. I've got Juan Soto put away. I've got and even in the NFL, I can say I have Tom Brady put away, even though he's 40 some odd. He's still playing today. Right. I've got Breeze put away. I've got the guys. Right. Yeah. So anyway, I've got to run. I just wanted to call and say hi to everybody. Sure. I've got to I have a donation I need to pick up, so I've got to go. Nice. I've got to go pick it up. I told them I'd be there about 11. So, but I wanted to call in, and we can argue about the politics of the cool down of getting more stimulus money to everybody, and that'll take care of the cool down real fast, because then everybody will have somebody to play with again.
There you go. Well, thanks for calling in, Rich. It's always a pleasure,
Rich. Okay, bye-bye.
See you, bud. All right, y'all. And once again, please, we do have about 10 minutes left, so please call in and join the show. Any questions you have about the hobby, anything at all, question for Brian, Brody, anybody. But, Brian, you make a really good point. Brody, you can say one thing another thing I see people all the time saying is, there's no that the hobby's dying with kids and everything, that no kids are in the hobby and stuff. And I always tell them to just watch this show, and especially here, and to talk to you. I mean, you have your finger on the pulse of the hobby more than most people that I know, even at a young age. But the young collectors, I mean, it's a very, very strong group, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. And I think the companies have been helping it. I think the Leaf draft and the Topps opening day and the big league, it all is going to work because kids are going to see the cards and they're going to be like, ooh, this is my favorite player. This is cool. And once they get a job when they're 20 and they have enough money to buy the expensive stuff, they're probably going to do it. I think it's gonna work eventually. Especially, I think the main thing is to keep putting out the opening day, the Leaf draft, the big league, all that small stuff that kids would like and can afford. I think it's the gold mine for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. But we've actually got a question in the comments. Oh, what's going on, Rich? So here we go. Something a little bit off of sports cards a little. What about Pokemon? We've seen a lot of big celebrities lately, and we can kind of transition this into sports cards too, because I saw that Steve Aoki is doing group breaks. You've got what's that other YouTuber that also likes to fight people, whatever his name is, Jake Paul. He's doing box breaks. Marky Mark's doing box breaks with his kids. Not dressed like the Funky Bunch, but it's all right. But what do you guys think about Pokemon and the big celebrities that are pushing cards and everything these days? Brian, have you in particular, have you been talking, have you been contacted by people? Obviously you said hedge fund managers and stuff. Have you talked to people and had people interested in doing this breaking and stuff like that, and not just like possibly investing?
Well, I mean, Harrison and the guys at Pawn Stars did a break this week online. So, I mean, you're seeing guys, more and more guys are doing this. And I'll be honest, this might be the future of breaking, is, taking this to the next level. But I mean, honestly, the fact that the celebrities are buying assets like this, again, I mean, you don't have to be very smart to know that this is real money coming in, and that this is where we've achieved a pop culture level that is like different level. Like I think for what you have to get your arms around is what Brody's generation has to learn, is that a card can have value. Once you get your arms around that, the sky's the limit. The problem is a lot of people think a card can't have value. It's a piece of paper. It's stupid. Like, if someone thinks that, they're never going to come around. Once they accept that a card has value, sky's the limit. And the fact that these celebrities are hearing it and seeing it, can you imagine if, and again, I don't think Kendall Jenner is going to collect cards, but can you imagine if Kendall Jenner started IGing cards? It would be insane. There'd be a whole generation of girl collectors all of a sudden that we desperately need, because they're not quite here in the volumes they need to be. And they definitely make the hobby better looking than we are right now. But I think, we just don't have that. There's so much potential for this phenomenon to spread and for cards to be part of pop culture. And I think ignoring that is, again, being a denier of reality. We've had a shift. Celebrities are now involved. I'm telling you, this is so real. These are all the signs. You're pointing out every sign that this is a real
Exactly. That's a perfect word for it, a paradigm shift. It really is. And I mean, Brody, I'm sure you've even seen, I mean, you growing up as a kid, I remember as a kid collecting cards and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a shift in how younger kids look at cards. I mean, you just saw that what was it, the Giannis that sold? I mean, I know his father, had helped him a little bit, but the kid was the one that the young kid was the one that had actually bought it when he was, I think, 15 or 16 years old, and he'd end up buying it for what, like $500,000, and then sold it for like $1 million. So I mean, you've got some kids these days with some serious money in this industry.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think there's also two groups of kid collectors. There's the group that kind of collects their favorite players. They think the cards are made of cardboard. And then there's kids like me that think of cards as art, like we talked about earlier. And cards are art if you believe in it, because like we said earlier, cardboard cannot sell for millions of dollars. It's not possible.
Exactly.
Well, I will say Bitcoin can sell for millions of dollars, and they're fake. There's nothing real. So it is possible.
Yes.
Brody's right. If it were just cardboard, the value is not there. But guess what? Money, theoretically, is just paper with our confidence in our government giving it value. So if we can make that leap that our government makes money worth something, believe in DP. Cards are worth something.
Yes. Yes. Hey, Brian, you could not have said it better. Perfectly said. Yeah. We actually have a caller. Jeremy, what's going on, man, from Sports Card Live?
Hey,
what's
guys.
up, man?
What's up?
Not much, man. Hey, Brian. Hey, Brody. No,
Jeremy.
Hey, man. Hey, I've heard you guys just talking about the Pokemon a little bit, and then I had to shut it off. So you might have moved on, but that break last night that Logan Paul did anyone see that, where he broke that original box? One packet he sold off the packs for $11,111 each to people out there, and he broke it last night on YouTube Live, and I was watching it. He had up to 300,000 people watching that break last night of Pokemon cards, and he pulled
the future right there.
He pulled the Charizard,
exactly.
He pulled all the big ones, and he pulled them for other people, and 250,000 people watching this thing the whole way through. It was quite the spectacle. And also last night, Brian, you'll know our buddy Jeff at Iconic Auctions sold off a first edition Charizard Holo PSA 10. And with the buyer's premium, it was like $230,000, and it went to former rapper Logic, drops $226,000 on TMZ. Announced that just today that this happened last night. So last night was a big night for Pokemon, and it's new to me, but boy, I think it's not going to be new for much longer. This is a legitimate category within trade. I mean, I'm stating the obvious there, but this is going to start to spread.
And this hits the theme we just talked about. The people buying these cards for this price played the game 10 or 15 years ago.
Yep.
This is the thing. It's what you collect in your prime formative years, or what mattered in your life, that is so appealing when it comes time to put your money to work and to spend the spoils of your hard work.
Yeah.
And that's why Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh to a lesser extent, but Pokemon and Magic to an equal extent probably are getting this attention, because that's what people collected 15 years ago before they had money. And now these young guys with money, their love for that didn't disappear. They remember it. It was part of who they were, their fabric. So that's what's beautiful, is we're continuing to build asset classes every day, as kids like Brody, or young men like Brody who are very smart, are picking out those things that form them, that matter to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't listen to kids like Brody, or young men like Brody, we're gonna miss it, because we're still living in the 1980s and 90s. Brody's living in the 2010s and 20s,
Yeah.
So I think what you point out is exactly right. That's what forms our investment thesis here. Is what was
Brian,
cool again.
BG, you said it well a few minutes ago when you said that if you want to kind of get ahead of the curve, you got to buy up what people like Brody are the players that they're big fans of now. Because when Brody's 35, 40 years old and has a lot more money to spend than he does now, that's who he'll be chasing. So, I mean, that's a really astute comment. But what most people are doing with those types of cards is they're looking for the quick flip. And by quick, I mean like from a week to 2 month kind of flip. They're not even thinking about holding these things past the year 2020. Right. And while you can make some short-term gains in the interim with the right players, if the right circumstances present themselves, you can. But you can also make a more conservative and more, I'd say, guaranteed almost return, or I don't know, guarantee is a strong word, but you know what I mean, more towards a guarantee if you hold these things long-term, because eventually people are going to want to buy these cards in the future, because that's who they're going to remember, just like you said, Brian.
And you know what? When Facebook IPO'd and it crashed on day one, I bought shares for $20 and I sold them for $21.50. And I was so pumped because I made 7.5% in one day, and I made a quick flip. And now it's 275. And if you go ask any day trader who's a flipper, which most of these card kids are, not kids, but card people are, young people who flip cards, they're going to tell you how they just made a quick 10% in 2 days, or 50% in 2 days, or whatever. But if you go find a day trader who made a living out of flipping, every one of them has 25 amazing stories of how they used to own Apple when it was $12, and now it's the equivalent of $1,800. Every one of them has that story.
Yeah.
And so you can be part of the story. You can be the day trader that reminisces about how you used to have 13,000 shares of Apple for 8 minutes. Or you can be the guy who said, I bought 100 shares a month for 20 years. And look what I've got. So you can be either part of that story. That's perfectly fine. Be a flipper. But I don't think you have to be. And I think there's a real opportunity there. I really do.
Can I make one more point on something that you said way earlier on in the episode, Brian? you were mentioning it was the discussion around the fractional ownership, and you said, these cards are being sold at record-breaking prices. So do you want to be the one who's paying the record-breaking price? And I agree with that. I mean, obviously they're going for big money because it's where the market is. But every time a Honus Wagner card sells, and every time a high-grade 52, 53 Mickey Mantle sells, it's like every time they sell, they're setting a record. If they don't sell, the prices can't go up. It's not like a Young Guns, Brian, or a Tatis or an Acuna, where they're selling dozens every evening, if not more. So, but cards like that, they break a record every time they sell. So it's like in order for a card to go from $1 million to $2 million, it has to sell in between, let's say, one. So if you say, oh, I shouldn't have sold my Honus Wagner for $1 million, I could have waited, it would have hit 2 million. Well, you had to sell it for it to take that next step anyway. So these cards have to break records, and just because they broke a record, it doesn't mean they won't break a record again next time. I'm just putting that out there.
I don't disagree with you. I think the problem is they're illiquid also, and I think that's a challenge. When there's an exchange, there's a buy-sell spread that's 1% apart, where you can push a button and get out of your card anytime or buy more. Like, that gets my attention. That I get hot over that. I'd play that game.
Well, I don't have any horse in this race, but I did have the CEO of Collectible on my show last Wednesday, and there's gonna be a secondary market to trade their shares. There is a 90-day hold period, which to me is a non-issue. But once that 90 days passes, you then have the ability to trade your shares on the open market with other people who have accounts in that. But
let's see how tight that spread is, because if the IPO is at 25 and the bid is at 20 and the ask is at 30, that's not a liquid market. If the bid is 24.75 and the ask is 24.90 or 25. That's a liquid market.
I agree 100%. The one comment on that is while it's an old concept, fractional ownership has been around for a long time, and with other assets. Obviously, the stock market is all fractional ownership. It's very new, and I think someone has to do it first. So it's going to take some time for that market to mature, obviously, and there's going to be some hiccups along the way. So I think, as a hobby, we have to decide, is this something that's going to stick around like grading did back in the day? People were very skeptical about grading back in the early 90s. Oh, it's a fad. Is fractional ownership a fad, or is it going to stick around? And if you think it's going to stick around, or for it to stick around, it's going to go through iterations and some changes and some evolution. And maybe one day, hopefully one day, if this market is as strong as we think it is, and Brian, as bullish as you are on it, then it almost has to work in the long run, because it's just a natural evolution. Those are kind of my thoughts. But again, I don't have a horse in the race, so I prefer to own my cards outright. But
I'm with you.
What are your thoughts on that?
But Drew, let me ask you, you do Rally Road.
Yeah, a little bit.
What are you over at Rally Road? Is that pretty liquid?
Oh, God. Don't even get me started. Like I said, I'm very glad that when I say I tried it, I meant like $20. I'll just put it that way.
Thing. When you start these things, the first experience someone has with a platform or a concept often defines the user acceptance of that platform or concept. Yes. So I think if I started one tomorrow that was the Leaf Exchange, where we offered fractional ownership, I would need to open my wallet and create liquidity just to prove to the market that I stand behind my asset.
Right.
So if you're selling the shares of the 53 Topps 10 Mantle at $25, I think the people who sold their shares, namely probably Evan Mathis, if it was all his card, you could stand back at $23.75 and say, I'll take the shares back if you decide you don't want them. Let's roll.
Yep.
And provide a 5% cushion to say, this is how strong I believe in the asset we just sold you. If they do that, I think that's a great part of the user experience that would be smart. If they don't back it up, it looks more like a cash grab, which is what I fear. But let's hope that that's where it is, and they provide that liquidity. If they have the money to buy the cards, hopefully they have the money to provide the liquidity.
Right.
And they just got a bunch of money in. They can use that same money to support it. I think that's critical. And then you have the stock market. People are supporting a lot of these stocks all the time anyway. Market makers are putting support buys in all the time. I'm supporting Acuna updates right now. At 150, I'll take 2,000.
Right.
They will not drop below 150. I'll buy every one. There's only 12,000 in the pop. I'll take 2,000 at 150. So I'm the guy.
We're always protecting the bottom, right? I mean,
Right.
Unless Aaron Mathis or whoever's behind collectible, let's see them do
whatever,
that. Let's
whatever
see them
asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, thanks so much for the call, man. I'll be
Jeremy.
looking forward to seeing you
Brody.
later tonight.
Yeah, we'll continue some of these discussions tonight, Drew.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the call, bud.
Man,
Yeah,
good
you
to
got
see
to
you guys.
tune into his show. Jeremy's one of the best, and he's a
Yes.
collector and dealer. And like,
Yes.
he asks hard questions and he asks easy questions. I've been on there, and trust me, there's hard questions for manufacturers.
Oh, yeah.
He does a really good job of
No, Jeremy's
asking
phenomenal.
hard questions and easy questions, and like exploring different ideas that some guys don't try to tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys don't know, he is the host of Sports Cards Live on YouTube. It's a phenomenal show. I'll be on there tonight at 10 p.m. From 10 p.m. Eastern to about 12 or so, midnight or so. We're going to go late night. But Jeremy, wonderful guy. Thanks so much for calling in, bud. But guys, I guess that'll wrap it up for this week. We went a little overboard today. Thanks so much for everybody that commented, called in, asked any questions. Thank you guys so much. And Brody, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you guys so much. It was a lot of fun.
And Brian as well, always a pleasure.
Good to meet you, Brody.
Nice to meet you
Yes,
too, Brian.
and we will see you guys next Saturday. So y'all take it easy. See
See
you
you later.
Perfect.